Saturday saw, at long last, a ray of light amid the darkness of the Israel-Hamas war, namely the daring rescue of 4 of Hamas's hostages by IDF forces. In a sane world, this joyous event, although it is bittersweet given that dozens of hostages remain in the hands of the terrorists, would have been greeted with rapture, celebration around the world. But that is not at all what we saw. What we saw instead were outraged functionaries of the United Nations and the European Union damning Israel for the deaths of Palestinian civilians in the course of the raid. We saw leading media outlets like the Associated Press, the Washington Post, and the BBC taking the exact same line, suggesting perhaps that Jewish lives are not worth quite enough to command the last full measure of devotion from the IDF. Perhaps worst of all, we saw the White House itself send out Vice President Kamala Harris to publicly moan and groan lugubriously over this rescue operation while making token noises about how it was vaguely sort of a good thing. And of course, we saw the usual cadre of activists on Twitter, here in America and elsewhere, loudly proclaiming that should they ever be taken hostage, they certainly wouldn't want to be rescued if it meant any civilians might be killed. Whether that last is a good faith argument or not is of course impossible to assess, but one thing is absolutely beyond contradiction, that the onus of blame for the civilian casualties in the course of this raid lies squarely with Hamas. Hamas decided to take these hostages on October 7th and to keep them at considerable risk to the cause they claim to fight for, the cause of Palestinian national autonomy, and at considerable risk to their fellow Palestinians, whom they use as human shields by placing their men and material in schools, hospitals, mosques, numerous other civilian locations to up the body count and create political and reputational problems for Israel when it fights back against the terror. Unsurprisingly, Hamas located these hostages in a busy area of Gaza near the Nusayrat market, deliberately so that should any rescue attempt be undertaken, it would up the civilian body count. Now, the body counts that we have, of course, come from the Hamas-controlled Gaza Health Ministry, which has been proven again and again and again to be lying about death counts. But whether it is the 274 claimed by the Hamas-controlled Gaza Health Ministry or some smaller number, nonetheless, private correspondence from one of Hamas's main military leaders, Yahya Sinwar, has come to light showing that he believes the exact same thing.